I give you the minutes for the last meeting? I don't think I had gotten them. We'll approve these next time. I didn't send them to you.
9:01, we'll call the meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of the Republic, for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible.
All right, do a roll call. Get your name into the mic, and I ask that you speak into the mic. Up close, people actually do review these and listen, and having done this for the last couple of meetings, there's a lot of void when people are talking. We don't want to lose your words of wisdom, so please make sure you speak into the mic as you're answering questions or inputting information.
If you see, if it's green, it's picking you up.
Mike Charles.
Ron Thomas.
John Goggin.
Heidi Youngworth.
Nickel.
Izzy Bayhan.
And
Chelsea O'Reilly.
And absent is Tom Gressman. So this meeting is for one purpose only today, and I'm going to take the liberty of, I made a couple of notes to keep us focused on what our charge is. So,
Before you jump into that, can we just make a note on here, the approval of minutes, we're going to push that to your next meeting because I did not get that to you in time, please.
get there. So today, as we debate and arrive at a consensus opinion or positions on the questions posed to us by the consultant, I want to remind everybody we are answering as a committee that is tasked with public safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicle operators. That's the charge to us by the council, and as part of that, we must conform to the laws, that our answers must conform to the laws of the state, the county, and the town, or advise the council that we are taking exception to those. So basically what I'm saying is this is to talk about requirements and concerns about pedestrians, cyclists, and motor vehicle operators. There's been a great deal of discussion about turtle safety, and that is what Marine Task Force is tasked with doing by the council. So we'll capture that, we'll answer the questions in line with that, and then if there's any individual comments that people have, we'll add those as well to the report that we send off to the consultant. We're identifying criteria to be considered in the study and the consultant's ultimate recommendations. We're not here to design the outcome. In the stakeholder meetings, I hope everybody had a chance to watch those 2 hours worth of questions and presentation. There was a lot of, this is how you should do it. We're not here to design. They've made it very clear to everybody that they have not made any recommendations. They are looking for the requirements that the various committees are looking for so that they can incorporate it. When we get the recommendations, we will sit down with the recommendations and make sure that our concerns have all been addressed. Considerations to be discussed, and I wrote a few down for us to think about as we're going through. Certainly the legal compliance. Roger mentioned last week when he talked to you the liability between the county and the town for the lighting design and whether it was adequate. I'm going to try and follow up with him or the attorney because I really didn't understand how a county road that the county maintains is our liability as a town where that breakdown would be. But maybe it's because if we design and pay for the monthly charges to the lighting, somehow that makes us liable for any accidents on there versus the other. But I just want to let you know I was going to follow up on that. The other is the continuous light consideration is a continuous light source. That's the uniformity in the transition lighting. The original MPO study and everything we've heard since then over the last 2 to 3 years, it's that uniformity of the lighting and the impact that has on the changing in the eye that is the key for pedestrian, vehicle, and cyclist safety. There was a lot of discussion about 4,000, 3,000, LED or amber, and again, of you may be engineers and understand the distinctions between that, but that distinction is to be made by the consultant and the recommendations coming back. The one thing I think we should look at is make them demonstrate, in fact, that amber or 400 or 3,000 or 2,700 does actually provide sufficient lighting, in our opinion, for pedestrians and cyclists, et cetera. I think another consideration is the financial viability. I've heard a lot of talk about cost doesn't matter. Well, cost does matter, if not for the initial cost, because they want to take another loan. I mean, the town's already about $60 to $70 million in long-term debt, so what's 10 to 12 more? But the concern I have on the viability of the financial is that going forward, that if in a catastrophe, having to rebuild, or normal maintenance and the cost of that those costs do not become something that can't be maintained by future budgets, and there becomes a gap in the coverage down the road. And so our concern is that there is a consistent plan to ensure that this lighting that is put up there is financially viable. Another is inventory sufficient. We know that Florida Power and Light in the past, and they've told us they maintain inventory sufficient for a disaster to come in and replace what's there. They have staff to do that. We need to make sure that if a solution is determined, a recommendation comes forward that does not ensure sufficient inventories in case of a catastrophe, that's something we should be opposed to, or certainly concerned about, so that there is no gap in the coverage. Another thing that's concerning is design of the crosswalk lighting. There is nothing in the RFP that requires them to look at crosswalk lighting. Chelsea will explain in a minute what's going on with the county, but right now they will be designing a solution, whatever that may be, making recommendations that does not include crosswalk lighting. We know from past conversations with the county and the county engineer, Rob Phelan, that the combination of street lighting, area lighting, and crosswalk lighting has to be coordinated. So the concern here is that they could come up with a solution that forces the county into a design that may not be optimal because we've already invested in street lighting that conflicts with crosswalk lighting. Our concern is the clarity of the visibility inside the crosswalk. Is that pretty accurate, that the county is committed to doing that design once this is finished?
So Chelsea O'Reilly, Public Works Director. Rob Phelan from the county mentioned that the county has a commitment to provide lighting at crosswalks that fits with the Estero lighting design. So ultimately, the county's consultant would be doing the design, and that we would work together to make sure that the county's crosswalks lighting design is consistent with the town's Estero lighting design.
Right. And another is the number of additional poles. The number of additional poles, the concern we have to think about is visibility for cars backing out of side driveways. It's very difficult to back into Estero to begin with. If we had a number of streetlight poles where they had to be located, could also impair that visibility as people are backing out, or as bicyclists going the wrong way on the sidewalk. Certainly they're wrong, but that doesn't mean that we want them to get hit because their visibility was blocked by a pole. We'll talk about in here the lighting coverage, street only, street and sidewalk, and keyhole. And then the lighting to cover both sides of the street. We only have the poles on the Gulf side. How do we ensure that the lighting, if we go to sidewalk or keyhole or just to the street, that surround lighting that they talked about without really describing, how do we ensure that we have that covered for both sides of the street? And then the glare impact of the white headlights and surrounding lights. One of the things is and we shared this, Chelsea shared it with you, the soft light, the individual Mark Baker, I think it is from Soft Light, has given us a number of emails and examples of glare, and the white lights versus the amber lights versus the headlights versus surrounding lights, as those combine, the glare that causes for not only the disabled person, someone that can get an epileptic seizure from something like that, people with PTSD, but also just the visibility. We need to consider in the amber versus the headlights versus surrounding light, how those things come together for glare. was also a lot of discussion about the health effects at the stakeholder meeting. The health effects really has never been, public safety, we've never really discussed public health. So that, again, there are people addressing that. I don't believe we need to. And then there is, and you've received emails from Chelsea that were forwarded by Cindy Johnson, and where it talked about a difference of opinion than the consultant on lighting for EMS, where she talked about Flagstaff in northern Arizona. That may be true for northern Arizona. I've actually been on that campus many times, and it has no resemblance whatsoever to Fort Myers Beach. It's a beautiful place, but they don't have the density and the rest of that is there. On those, one thing I'm going to ask is that we make a recommendation to them that they talk to Chief Love and they talk to the captain, the West District captain, and ask them their opinion on lighting as it affects them on emergency responses.
I can tell you that I do know that the lighting consultant has attempted to reach out. I believe to both of those. I for sure know about LCSO. So we are making strides at doing that already.
We will formalize that in our recommendations, I hope. So that's, I wanted to lead with that to kind of set a tone, so we had a direction, but that's just my opinion, and now I'm going to open it up for comments and agreement or disagreements. Anybody? That's what the track we're on. And if we go to this document that they asked us to complete.
I want to add one thing. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. I want to add on the side street lighting. That was something they listed in there. Use uniformity.
Uniformity in transition.
Yes. Side streets.
All right, so this form that they sent us, I'm sure you've all looked at it and marked it up. It's very difficult to fill out with those statements I just made.
Exactly.
And so,
Good. I'm glad everyone else had trouble too.
well, I get what it's designed for. It's designed for just a general feel on how you feel about turtles and pedestrians and basic concepts. And that's good, I get. I mean, that serves one of their purposes, but it makes it difficult for us to address as a public safety committee the issues we want. So what I recommend is we go through it, we answer where we can, and then we go back and some of the things I had and things you want to add, we just come up with, these are additional concerns that we have. And those areas that mean nothing to us, just put not applicable to our committee.
When I went over it, I felt like they were making us choose between turtles or humans.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, okay, I like the turtles, but when it comes down to it, we need to keep our humans safe.
That's
I mean, I hate to say that, but that's what I felt like when, I mean, I read over this like 10 times and I'm like, it's very frustrating. I felt like they were asking us to do their job. I mean, that's the way I felt when I read it. I could be totally wrong. But in their presentation, they didn't look at any other beach areas like ours to do any research.
Right.
And I felt that they wanted us to do their research and they're just going to get paid. That's the way I felt about it. So I don't know if, that's just my opinion.
The other issue is, it's like you said, we're not engineers. I couldn't tell you what 4,000 K looks like, how it disorients a turtle, what it means for a human, what they see. I haven't seen the 2,700 to 3,000. Where does that fall in line? And how does the amber light almost, you need to see a visual of, you're walking down the street, this is what an amber light looks like, and this is when you cross the street, and this is what you're going to see, this is what you're going to see from the beach. This is 4,000, this is 3,000. They didn't give us, and I completely agree with Heidi. I had a hard time writing this, and I kept going, it's important to everything.
Yep.
I want to, that's your job. We want to make everyone happy and safe. So what's your best solution?
That's my input as well when I was going through it. Um, Our job is the human safety aspect, but why can we not have both? And that's their job to provide those options to us, just like Dawn said.
As I went through this, I said, well, there are very clearly trade-offs. And trade-offs have to be made. If you go 100%, we're gonna make this the safest beach on earth for pedestrians and bicyclists and motor vehicles, we're going to probably create a situation that is for wildlife on the beach. On the other hand, if we try to make this solution great for the wildlife on the beach, we're not gonna solve the problem with citizen safety on the street and crossing the street. There are trade-offs. Eventually, hoping that we're paying this firm enough money that they can give us a solution that balances these trade-offs. The balance always has to be in favor of people. I mean, it's not 50-50, okay? But have to still consider the impact on wildlife. There are rules and regulations as well, state law and things that we have to take into consideration. Anything that the town chooses.
And just to follow up on all that, our job as an advisory committee is to say, from the public safety for pedestrians, this is what we believe is optimal. It is going to be up to that consultant to then go through and weigh the laws on motor vehicle safety from the Green Book, the Florida Wildlife, that come up with a recommendation. And then, fortunately, the decision rests with those 5 people that are going to sit up there, that are going to say, we're going to be in compliance to whatever way they want to balance those scales.
Correct.
But our job as an advisory is to say, look, we understand the other, but we're advising you that from public safety, these are what we believe you should follow when you make that decision. Roger, did you want to add anything?
Turn the mic on. Would.
Morning.
So as I see this project evolve, and you heard from the consultant last time they made their presentation to you all, that they're looking at this option with a single light head fixture with 2 bulbs, or in essence, a bulb that will switch from lighting to white lighting, right? Everyone heard that? So, what that means is now how many or the distance they are set apart from one another. Of course, clearly, they would probably be positioned so that if the white light is on, they'll meet the 1 candle foot power requirement of safety lighting. Problem then is if they switch internal season to the amber light, it is not going to generate enough light, and it won't generate the same candle power. So I believe from this committee's perspective, what that means is to encourage the council to face the poles or the lights so that internal season, it'll generate 1 candle power. And when it's a white light, it would generate more than 1 candle power. But the effect would be that you would have 1 candle power all year round. Safety lighting is your prerogative. We can do with a little less than 1 candle power during candle power in turtle season, and you could go with spacing of the poles where 1 candle foot power of lighting white lights, but you may not quite get it from yellow lights, amber lights during turtle season. And I think really, if you sort of, strip away the layers of the onion, as they say, that's what you kind of get down to. The other issue that I see that'll be before you and the other committee and the council when they make the decision is this. surprisingly to me, and possibly to you, is this white amber fixture is not readily available today. So that means that if our consensus is to move in that direction, it's going to take time for someone to manufacture it, or the three or four agencies to evaluate it, before we can theoretically implement it. Or we can implement it without their review, but, there's risk with that, but I guess it could be done. So, that's going to mean a little bit more patience on everyone's part. It means that DP and FWC has to look at it, we would have to look at it. We're going to try to get it through FPL lease program, and put it on their polls, they would have to look at it. So, that's going to take some time, in addition to just, bring up some manufacturer in the Midwest and say, make us 500 of these. So those are just some considerations that you need to think about, because if you're not willing to wait, and you possibly are looking at a situation of buying two separate bulbs that exist today, one that's in.
I guess my argument would be, Roger, if it's determined that one candle watt, the white, is what's best and that's safest, then that should be what's there all the time. If they say that we can do it with amber light that's sufficient during turtle season, then it should be sufficient year-round. My concern is to come up with different lighting for saying basically a pedestrian during turtle season is in greater jeopardy than they are the rest of the year. We're setting up two different standards for what we're saying is public safety for individuals. So it's either amber works year-round, or it doesn't work year-round, and white works year-round, or it doesn't work year-round. I don't know the answer. I don't have that. We're not here to make that decision. But I will strongly argue that we do not change the lighting pattern or reduce the efficiency for visibility during turtle season than what it would be for the rest of the year, because basically you're saying, or we value human life less during turtle season than we do the rest of the year, and that's wrong.
So, John, and with your point, and I understand your point, and you've been making it consistently for years, so it hasn't changed. What that position dictates is shorter spacing between the poles, us to get the amber lights to generate the same safety lighting value as the white lights. There'll be a need for more of them.
It's true if, in fact, amber is the solution that they bring forward.
I'm just saying, if, well, whether it's a standalone amber or a double bulb amber, it's clear to me, at least on the information that I've seen, that spacing of white lighting could be more distance between them and generate enough light to meet the 1-foot candle than the amber can. So I hope I'm proven wrong, but potentially that's what I know today. As a result of that, it just means that there'll be theoretically more heads, more poles, and therefore more expense. Not to say that it's not worth it. It's just I'll go into it with our eyes wide open.
And again, my position isn't which light is appropriate. It's that it's consistent for the full year. We don't vary. Like today, we turn lights off. That puts pedestrians in jeopardy at certain times of the year. Go ahead, Don.
Well, I was going to say, what's the difference of adding the cost side of seeing a rendition or a model that shows the lighting with all the additional amber poles, as opposed to creating a brand new, let's call it invention, really it is, to have the double light switch and have it built and have it go through all the processes. Where do those two costs even, where do they even out? I mean, it's like we're inventing something to solve our problem. That's got to be just as expensive, if not more, than adding more poles.
Well, I think the argument is, and I'm not saying it's a good argument. I think the argument is that when you look at the cost of the poles versus the fixtures, poles and putting them in the ground are a lot more expensive. So I think that might be the impetus to try to find a bulb that has dual purpose. But I don't know that, but that might be a question you put in that blank part for the survey you'll be sending back to the consultant.
Anybody else got anything for Roger?
Roger, you
Sir.
up something.
Okay, thank you. That's why. Great. Have a great morning, everybody. It's good to see you all, and thank you so much for all your hard work.
All right, thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
All right, let's turn to this survey then and see how we want to respond. So the first page, page 4 of 8, I guess it was, the first page here really talks about the light color. And we can go down through increased sky glow. I don't know that that has an effect on visibility for pedestrians and vehicle people. Do you know, Mike, if sky glow, I understand what sky glow is, but I'm not sure how that would impact pedestrians. So I'm not
Here,
sure.
I mean, what they did is, how is important is this to the turtle? How important is this outside turtle season? That's what everybody was saying earlier. Is they're making us, I signed 1 and 1 to 10. So increased sky glow.
So with this one, when it says inside and outside of turtle season, you heard me tell Roger, and apparently I must have been consistent now since I've been sitting on this committee, that there shouldn't be different standards for visibility during turtle season and non-turtle season. I mean, if it's important that we have X as the solution for X number of months out of the year when we're not in turtle season, how can we then argue that, well, don't worry about it, you're safe going to some substandard of that during turtle season? I mean, we may have to do that because of the law and to get some compromise in that, but I don't think that's a position that I'm comfortable taking with as a committee.
I don't know. On page 3, it's laying out, what, 4 different kinds of bulbs here. I guess my question is, on the bottom, that must be the most turtle-friendly,
We don't know.
the Cree RSW amber.
Oh,
I'm just assuming that's it.
Yeah,
As you can see, that would take 561 polls to give you, presuming the 1 candle power. Is that what, I think that's what they're trying to allude here.
What's the difference though between the one above it, Illuminaire amber? So
I don't
that's
know.
an
Is
amber.
is that even an effective tool to protect the wildlife? 'Cause if it's not, then why would we even look at that? I would think we would be looking at the one above that, because that's going to provide us, in all likelihood, the greatest amount of public safety lighting. The difference between the 4000K and the Luminaire Amber is very little, it seems to me, in terms of candle watt, or at least number of poles required to accomplish the mission. Now, it's going to cost more to run it. That's clearly.
listen, I hung these lights my whole life, so, and I don't know what these mean.
I feel better about that because I sure didn't understand it.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, we go out and hang the lights, but, you know, they engineer them before we get there. They hang what they give us.
To answer page 4, as Mike points out, they're basically saying how important is lighting during turtle season, and from our case, how important is lighting for pedestrians during turtle season, how important is it outside? I think our answer to this is, it is important, equally important, both seasons.
Exactly.
And the solution needs to represent the best possible solution
Exactly.
regardless of the time of year.
Exactly.
And so the whole,
Wholeheartedly.
this page, and I'll work with Chelsea to get, this thing to him, but our answer to this whole page is basically, there is no difference in the lighting between turtle season and non-turtle season. It's whatever the best solution they can come up with for pedestrians has to be uniform throughout the year.
Answers that whole page.
I'll listen back to and make sure it's verbatim.
Okay? Well, I'll draft something and you can, as always, correct it.
I want to add something also, because I keep bringing up side street. Down at the bottom of page 4, existing side street light color. Well, what is that asking me? I want to, it's the same concept. I think our side streets, do they affect turtles, and then and then the pedestrians, there needs to be uniformity throughout the entire island. Spacing needs to be
I
uniform.
just put white there.
Yeah, I don't know. I
LED.
mean, does it,
LED
So,
white.
Dawn, let me touch on that. So, oh goodness, it's probably been 2 years ago, or less, that we changed all of the side streets. Or I think all, but I think maybe 8 were missed. The lighting consultant picked up on those. The side streets included the beach accesses. So, having an environmentalist and Turtle Time identify that some of those lights on the beach accesses are seen from the beach, we do turn those off during season. So those have already been changed over to the brighter light, but because some of them are on beach accesses, we've had to turn them off.
What's on the side street, 4,000 K?
I believe so. So,
It's a white LED.
so basically, you're saying from the Estero to the beach is different than from Estero to the
we
Back Bay?
we turn those off if they're on the beach accesses
Okay.
during turtle season.
Even on the bay side of the road, if light close enough to the beach.
But the task,
turned off, right.
this consultant that we discussed with them, instead of providing exact locations of where we should put poles on the side streets, is to give us like a standard, every 100 feet based on X fixture. That way that can be assessed down the road, understanding that the priority right now is Estero Boulevard. So that way myself or somebody after me or 10 years down the road can take this standard and say, okay, this is what we're implementing on all of the side streets.
Let me ask this, you say you turn them off during turtle season, the ones that are near beach access?
Yes.
Is that a safety issue, turning them off? Obviously, you have them on for part of the year. When you turn them off, what's the effect on public safety?
For this committee to determine.
Well, that goes to my question, and I think it's where Dawn is leading, is that the side street and the uniformity with what's on Estero Boulevard. So if it's determined that side street lighting is important, and it's determined that beach access lighting is important, then the solution that they come up with should also address those transition points between side street lighting and Estero Boulevard lighting and its effect on the turtle.
It's a detriment to on bikes and cars, because they've got one off in my neighborhood when it's on the bay side. Sterling and Lanark, that's off. Say that you can see it, but it's on a corner. Obviously, it's
Access roads are typically pretty short from,
but I'm talking about on the bay side.
the light on a side street could be
It's high
observed
enough
from
to
the.
see straight to the beach.
Okay, so what I'm adding to this is uniformity throughout the year, and then also the solution needs to be consistent for side streets with Estero so that we're not turning lights on and off. All right, so that's pretty much what I had for page 4. 4 to page 5. Go ahead.
They had us cross out, where it says turtle-friendly amber existing side street color, they had us cross that out.
Which one?
The, where it says turtle-friendly, the first one, existing side street color, they had us cross that out, but,
They didn't tell us what to put.
so that goes with non-consistency. You know what I mean? So they're gonna do turtle-friendly amber throughout the whole island, but not on the side streets. That's what I take by them having us cross this out, or am I taking that wrong?
I thought she said something about cut and paste or something, but the point is valid.
Okay.
She said it was a copy and paste error,
Oh, okay.
but she never clarified as to what light color she was referring to, other than.
So as we're going down 5.8, the sense of security and first responders, again, turtle season versus non-turtle season aside, the question that arose during the stakeholder meeting and the Q&A afterwards, and the 3 people that spoke, the sense of security, there was, in the consultant studies, they brought forward, and Mike and Chelsea, you've been there, so correct me if I misunderstood what they said in those meetings, that lighting did, increase lighting, did improve safety. And at the stakeholder meeting, some of the stakeholders brought in studies and said, well, that's not true. It actually increases crime. And so it raises the issue of if you have any studies on any of these topics that you want addressed, let us know and we'll introduce them. The studies that they brought up, I'm sure they're valid studies. I don't question the studies that the stakeholders brought up as being valid studies. The goal here is that both positions go to these consultants, and the consultants weigh both of those and present both of those positions to the council so the council can decide which they feel they want to follow and which they don't. Some of those studies were questioned that were completely legitimate surveys that are applicable here. 400K lighting, orange shows up better than green. 100K lighting is 400K lighting. So the San Jose study would be in something like that. It's great for us to know because we can help with education. Tell people, if you wear orange, you got a better chance of being seen than if you wear black, or whatever colors they had in the study. So with this one, the sense of security, because it's going to come up when we talk about from street to sidewalk to keyhole, just keep in mind there were, in that stakeholder meeting, there were positions on both, studies on both that said it increased crime, others said it decreased crime. First responders, I'd like to make the recommendation, formally make the recommendation that they do conduct an interview with the local fire and local sheriff, ask them exactly what their position is. Flagstaff made it clear that they don't care about amber, they use amber, and they have no trouble on a first response, whereas other areas, I believe it was Miami, said that it does make a difference, that they do hold back until they get their lights set up. So again, how policies are for Myers Beach Fire and for the Lee County Sheriff, they're the conditions to be considered here, not what took place in Miami or Flagstaff. And I think that goes by doing the interview.
I want to add, they put on here turtle-friendly amber. Well, is that only on the page 3? What's the difference between the amber? They've got the two different ambers here. So.
Right. Well, that was my question up
I
front.
don't understand
Is that first amber not turtle-friendly, but it's just pretty? Or is the,
Yeah.
or is it the only turtle-friendly light is the Cree at the bottom? Is that?
Right. That
Because
needs to
frankly,
be.
that doesn't look like a viable solution to any, frankly.
So that'd be a question that I think is more, and the other thing is, I'd like to see when we're talking about the increased visibility, by how much? What is it? We need some numbers. You can't just say kind of, sort of, worse. Well, are we talking 10%? Are we talking 20%, 50%? And I think we need a little more, poor color rendition. The first responders, how much of a poor color rendition? Little chance of turtle disorientation. What does that mean?
Again, and I'm going to go back through all these notes as soon as when we finish, I'll review them all. Anything else on 5 of 8? 6 of 8 talks about energy efficiency. I think there is, and I've again heard through stakeholders or emails people have sent, there is a carbon footprint impact on the type of light they pick. Living on the Back Bay, watching that tide come up year after year, climate change means a whole lot to me all of a sudden, and the carbon footprint starts to mean more and more to me. And if we are an eco-friendly community, which is what we claim to be, then we should consider that. I don't think it's part of public safety, but I do have that as a personal note I'm going to add at the end, that, the carbon footprint and the impact of the carbon footprint from an eco-friendly community is something that we're going to have to bring up. I bring that up here only because it triggered my memory on that. All right, how about page 7 of 8? This is where it goes to roadway and sidewalk, roadway and what they call the keyhole. So how far do we think the lighting should protect? Is it only on the road? Is it the road and sidewalk, or is it beyond the sidewalk to where the houses come into play? That would be that safety factor that they talked about. So I'll open this up to thoughts first. Anybody?
Like roadway and sidewalks personally. That's my personal opinion. I think we have many visitors who are walking, especially with our traffic, when it gets higher, everybody is walking, they're riding their bikes on the sidewalk. When you get to the keyhole, I think most houses, most businesses are lit, so they have their light, and you might have a small pocket, but it's not like we're having these driveways that are 2 miles long that you can't get it. I think there's enough of a gap, but I do believe that the sidewalk is very important to include.
There's thoughts, comments?
I agree with her.
Oh, I agree with Dawn.
Well, so do I.
Roadway and the sidewalks.
So do I. I think that, and another reason for the sidewalk is we know, we hear about it daily, the conflict between cyclists and pedestrians on the sidewalks. And, you know, personal experience, you can't see the cyclists coming at you in most of the dark areas out there. They don't see you. So it's not only because we've built these great sidewalks and people are using them and they should have the visibility as they're stepping off, as you mentioned, but it's also the conflicts right on the sidewalks themselves between the bicycles and the pedestrians walking. So the consensus is here, road to sidewalk is what they want to cover. And this is where I mentioned earlier the surround lighting, because we know they have it on the Gulf side. There's no streetlights on the Bay side, so how do they ensure that they reach sidewalk lighting on the Bay side? Don't take shorthand, so you're gonna have to bear with me. Okay, anything else on this? Page 7 of 8? That was it? Right?
I want to throw in
Did I
you.
miss a page?
No, the last page is just our,
Our overall considerations
consensus.
are
Are you going to go through the 6 things you talked about? Okay, good.
Well, we can, however you want to do that.
I just wanted to bring up crosswalk lighting since it kind of is going hand in hand with some of this.
So here's the notes I have from this. On page 4 of 8, uniformity throughout the year, side street beach access turned off during turtle season. We want consistency. The solution that they come up with needs to be consistent, so as not to turn off the lights. The interview, the fire department and the sheriff's department regarding EMS response. We want a degree of degradation for the decrease in visibility, something exactly, whether they do it through a demonstration program or they can scientifically tell us what that is. Then our consensus is road to sidewalk is what we want covered in the lighting. We also, legal compliance, whatever they come up with, we want legal compliance. And Roger brought this up, it's a liability issue. I mean, it's also the right thing to do, but there is a liability issue. I mentioned financial viability, and I said that when we were going through, and I just mentioned it, but my concern, when I'm talking about financial viability is, once they put in all these poles to maintain those and to keep those up and running, so there is no gap in the coverage going forward, because any gap in the coverage decreases the safety factor. So whatever they come up with, if they, float another loan for another 10 million to put in additional lights, you need some assurance that they're going to have funding to maintain those, and they're going to have a contract to maintain those going forward. That's kind of what I was going for on the financial viability. Thoughts on that?
that's true. And that it's done in like a timely manner, like it doesn't take 4 months to get a light bulb replaced.
I think a lot of the decision-making process they're looking at has to do between PL maintained system, private maintained system. The cost viability on a private maintained economical compared to working with FPL and guidelines
Time.
and time. The reliability is
Hurricanes.
the other issue.
Same thing John brought up earlier was hurricanes. I mean, we have trouble getting goods after a hurricane.
I'm going to say from a public safety point of view, it would have to go a long way to provide assurances a privately maintained system maintained by the town even hold a candle to what FPL can do for us. And having things gapped, as John was saying, extended periods of time because we had a hurricane. We have no lighting on Estero Boulevard for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or however long it would take a private carrier to do it, versus we could have had it done in maybe 4 weeks with FPL. So I think from a public safety point of view, it is more than just money. It is also public safety to get those lights back up there as quick as
Back up and
possible.
running, yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, hiring is a huge issue. Roger brought it up yesterday at our audit committee meeting. They've been trying to get, and so we think about, wait staff, and we hear about, no, they don't do it because they're getting $300. Recruiting for 3 accounting positions, and they can't get accounting positions. I don't know, Chelsea, how you're hiring, if you have openings and you're looking, but clearly hiring has become an issue, not only just for retail, but it's become an issue for governments. And I fully agree that the town's ability to take this over, and no reflection on the Director of Public Works, but if she does not get the staff, if they cut budget, and the next thing on the list, and we'll group it in here, is the inventories. So if they go for a new product and there is no inventory of new products because they made 500 and they stopped because they didn't want to, the manufacturer didn't want to invest the extra money to put lights aside, those are risks that are unacceptable, that in the case of a
I
situation.
have no
like that.
idea what our stores looks like.
Exactly.
Stocking all this stuff, bulbs, photo cells, lights themselves.
All right. Next up was the crosswalk lighting. So for the new members, what was agreed with Rob a year and a half ago now, Chelsea, at least, we started talking about crosswalk lighting. And what was agreed is that ideally, what they would have is lights overhanging the sidewalk. So the light would actually be kind of centered in the lane on each side to completely highlight that crosswalk. But what was clear in the discussion was that you can't just say that's the solution, because you have to factor in the street lighting, you have to factor in the surrounding lighting, and then the potential glare based on where the street is, curves, et cetera, so that each crosswalk has to be individually designed based on the configuration in that area. And this RFP, this consultant, is not tasked with doing that. So, one, we have a huge gap that's going to delay any implementation of crosswalk lighting, because we're going to have to wait till they finish, the council makes a decision, and then we have to start working with the county. And we will not have, at least the experience seen so far, we will not have the same liberties or access in the design input with the county that we have with our own personal consultant. And so when we get to the crosswalk design, first we have the delay, then when we get there, the county is now constrained by what the town has put in for street lighting, which may or may not enhance or it may decrease, the quality of the crosswalk lighting. But we also have less input because they are going to go by county standards and what their procurements look like and what they currently have, which I fully understand, and they think they should. But it does put constraints on us. And I think that's something we need to raise to the council to see if the council wants to delay and take those constraints that will come about, or if they want to, if they're satisfied with this consultant and what the consultant's quality is, do they want to extend this RFP in some way that they also now go and look at crosswalk lighting. So that's kind of my pitch on it, so I open it up. Do you have something you want to say about crosswalk, Don?
I do. I agree. I was just going to say that. I think we should ask them to have them put this into the consideration. Whatever light we choose, if it is amber lighting, there's got to be a solution to somehow light a crosswalk in a unique way that's turtle friendly, but the pedestrians can still see. But what I've noticed is, and you're talking about crosswalk lighting and having the lights over it so people can see it. I think even during the daytime, we run into problems with crosswalks, especially if the traffic is very backed up and you're going one direction and the traffic's backed up. You have people darting out on those crosswalks and you're coming down, even if you're going at 15 miles an hour, all of a sudden there is someone right in front of you. There has to be some kind of lighting acknowledgement, whether it's, and I don't know if this, certain ones in different cities, they press the button and there's a blinking light. I don't know if you can do that in amber and you can see it during the day. I don't know if it would mess with your eyesight, but I do think it is, needs to happen year-round and some kind of notification that the pedestrians become conditioned to push the buttons and use it or whatever it is, or if there's some kind of lighting on the in the middle of the street, I'm not sure. And then also at nighttime. I think they should add it.
I'm, Publix and Red Coconut, those flashing,
Yeah.
I mean, that catches your eye right there during the day.
And I love that. And I think there's a few other ones that have quite a bit of traffic and you don't see anybody coming and all of a sudden there's someone there.
But if they all had them, like you said, I mean, we've all ran into that same problem. Coming down the road, traffic's backed up, people are crossing, you don't see them, and they're right there. If they had a flashing, then you knew somebody's coming.
Okay, so a couple points.
Yeah.
Somebody had something more?
No, go ahead.
A couple points. One, we've talked to the county about RRFBs, which is a rapid flashing lights there at each crosswalk. And they talk about fatigue, driver fatigue when they see these multiple signs. There's too many, they start to ignore them. So that has been brought up. I think it's very legitimate to raise it as a concern with lighting because RRFBs or whatever they choose to put in there, how does that affect the overall lighting of a crosswalk area? But I also think when we get the survey back that we'll have an opportunity to raise those RRFB type devices in addition to the lighting study. I think we're going to get two opportunities. So it's very appropriate as part of our response on the consultant that they factor that in and how those lights will, I mean, you remember from Mark Baker, the individual, the advocate for the soft lighting that talked about for the disabled, how that agglomeration of lights, that consolidation of all these different lights affects them. So now you've got street lights, you've got headlight glare, you've got surrounding lights, you've got RRFBs flashing at you. I'm sure that sets some people off. So they have to factor that in. And then in addition to that, I think during the survey, I would not be surprised that this is one of the things that comes up is the crosswalk.
I don't really agree with the getting, that people get used to something flash and you're gonna.
I bring this up, Mike, because it was brought up that way, yeah.
Rob brought it up, I remember.
Again, that goes
He said
to a
you can't
county
have
position.
one at every one, he said.
And again, I think that's an omen as to how our design of crosswalks will go if we don't include it in the RFP here, or if we don't include it in this study. Next thing I had was the number of additional poles, obviously the financial cost, but I am concerned, I remember when we talked to Dave from the MPO study about the lights and how, or the poles and how close it would be together. I mean, it's going to look like a wall going up there when you start putting these lights this close together to get some of the quantity they need. And I am concerned about blocking visibility for people coming out of housing along there, coming out of businesses along there, and someone walking on the sidewalk, someone riding on the sidewalk the wrong way, that those poles are going to hinder their visibility. So I'd like to add that as a concern. And talked about that. We've talked about that. And then just when we get to personal comments, I have some. So what else did I miss, or what else do we want? Did you have anything else, Cindy? Dawn?
What?
I don't know where Cindy came from.
I know, I'm like,
Actually, I do, because I just read about turtle lighting on here, and the name that comes up immediately is
I do
Cindy.
get called that, that's
And-
why I was like, what?
And, you know, and I'm not picking on Cindy Johnson, she's doing a fantastic job in defending that, you know, the turtle lighting. That's what her role is, and she's doing a great job of it, so.
No, I don't have anything else.
Mike, you got anything else you want to add to our response? Heidi, Jim? Dan?
No.
The two personal things I had, one is, and they talked about this before, and I don't know what happened, and maybe someone on the committee remembers, or Chelsea. They did talk about alternate lighting in the dune as a way to help with the orientation for the turtles, and I haven't heard that discussed at all. We discussed it, one of the studies at one point, and with one of the consultants, one of the issues, one of the options that was brought up is if you cannot completely, you know, design street lighting to just stop disorientation, they looked at, well, are there ways to increase the lighting in the dunes that would offset the lighting on the streets to draw the turtles to the Gulf? And I haven't heard anybody discuss that. Have you, Chelsea, or anywhere along the
sir.
line?
No, sir.
Because, you know, that may be, in certain areas, that may be an alternative, you know, to do that. But I don't know one way or another. It'd be a great
I'd
question for you.
be,
We had talked about, no, we talked about putting lights, you know, out, you know, 300 yards out, they got the markers. You know what I mean? And, you know, somebody come up with an invention to put that on those, you know, a light on top of those, drawing the turtles out.
And that was the concept, whether it was on the buoys out there, or whether they were able to put some lighting in the dunes temporarily during the season or whatever.
And they don't have to be on every buoy, just if they, you know, all of a sudden there's a turtle nest there, you just go out there and install one.
I was gonna add that. That was a
That's a
personal thought on my part. It's
It's
not
a
really
moneymaker
public
there
safety,
for
but
all the
it's an
coast of
alternative.
Florida.
And then the other, I did talk about the carbon footprint. From what I've heard and what little I've read on that, different lighting solutions have a much higher carbon impact than others. And I think that personally, I want to add that as a personal one, because I think that if we're going to be an eco community and we keep talking about how eco-friendly we are, then we should consider the carbon footprint and what that is going to be. Mike, you got anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good.
I just had one quick question. They did mention, and we already said that they have not spoken to any other similar communities such as ourselves. And I do think we need to task them with that and tell us what other cities are doing. I don't know who else is in eco-friendly, or do they care? Is Marco, is Annabelle on the other side, or where is it?
I believe at the MRF meeting, because this committee raised that at the presentation, they did some homework prior to presenting to the Marine Resources Task Force. Did mention how they've looked into the city of Bonita Springs, Marco, some other local jurisdictions, and seeing what or how they are handling the lighting situation. So your comments did resonate with them.
St. Pete, Sarasota, Palm Beaches.
Just looking to see if there's anything in that
I
long
have to-
document from
I have-
Southland.
I have to jump out at 10:15. I have another meeting.
We'll be done.
Okay.
Heidi?
Not to
I have
rush.
nothing.
I have nothing other than there was no discussion in here at all about shielding. How the impact of shielding lights could influence, allow you to maintain a public safety level light on the street, shield it from the,
Every light that's, you know, that we buy has a shield. We, you know, used to have the globe lights, we used to black paint.
I think they talked about that in their presentation. They said you might still have the cone or the upward light, but again, why not show us an example on, like, if you can do a rendition and show this is a
shielded light, this is an
shielded light from
unshielded
the
light.
beach with 4,000. This is a shielded light with a beach at this. This is amber, and we should be able to see this, how it's going down the road
They
when you
just
see
clamp
these.
on, they just clamp on, you know.
Right, but they were saying, I'm talking more of the light. What do you see for the light? Well, it screw up a turtle.
I believe the intent from the consultant is to work once we narrow down the list is to work with some manufacturers and potentially do some pilot projects out here. It's been stated in some of the meetings. So that way, like this committee mentioned in the beginning, we all want to be able to physically see it.
Yeah, and that's, I just added that, we want to see, well, the comparable communities, but also comparison of the various options, the impacted degree of compromise and how much that affects it. I mean, we've said it a couple times, but I'll restate it at the end, that what's important to us is, as they come up with a solution, that we actually get to compare what we think is the best for the pedestrians to what they did, and how much we have to compromise pedestrian safety to comply with FWC mandates.
Should be computer-generated visuals that they should be able to, in this day and age, be able to come up to show exactly what it would look like.
Or they put up a demonstration on the north end or whatever it is, but there's got to be something that we can see that before we invest millions of dollars into a solution. And that's just our again, it's our recommendation, and the council will decide what it chooses to do. But I think the stronger we are in our recommendations and the more thorough, it gives them something to think about. So I read everything we've had. I will put this in the narrative that makes more sense to my notes. I will pass it to Chelsea. Chelsea will edit, and then we'll get it to you guys to comment, and then we'll get it to the consultant, and then we'll get it to the council.
And I will reiterate, the consultant plans on being here at the June 7th Town Council meeting to do a brief update before council takes their summer recess. So I was hoping to get your feedback and then Murph's feedback, give them a little bit of time to digest it, and prepare for the June 7th Town Council meeting.
And I will get it to you in a reasonable turnaround.
Okay, thanks.
The last thing on the agenda, there is nobody here, so the last thing on the agenda will be the next meeting, whatever that date would be. But the next meeting is when we will have the survey results, and I think that should be our primary focus, is going through those survey results and looking at how we decide how we want to summarize that, to present to the council, and then first off to say what the issues are that have been raised, and then how we are planning on going about coming up with recommendations for each of those issues that they raised. And I think that's the focus for the June meeting. And so that our goal would be, by the time they come back from their break, that we would have formulated a plan, maybe even to come up with some recommendations, so they can start looking at that. And I know that last week you were pretty adamant that you wanted budget information from this group, and that's good that you want that, but there is latitude in the budget with their add-on items, and they have money in surplus in the budget, so that I wouldn't deter that from us making recommendations going forward into the next year.
This lighting consultant was paid for, so.
Our next meeting is when, June 15th?
15th, 14th, 13th.
I won't be here. We'll see.
June 15th.
15th?
Yes. You're not going to be here?
I'll be out of town.
Mike's got an excuse, and we'll let Tom know. I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And you're out of here.
Do we, if the council's off, in summer, are we off in July?
It depends on what we decide to do. It'll be up to us. If we think
I'm
we
gonna be
can.
gone that meeting, I just,
Oh, okay.
I've maybe gone that meeting also, so.
thinking
So-
I could fly back, but I thought.
No, don't go flying back.